What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to be reviewing the fascinating and mysterious film stock, Film Washi X. This film is something that I have been very excited to try out ever since I heard about the very unique history and mission of its distributor, Film Washi. Film Washi is touted as the world's smallest film manufacturer, and it specializes in handcrafted filmmaking and industrial film conversion. Foreshadowing. They run a range of unique and intriguing products with names like A, Z, D, and S. But today, we're going to be talking about X. But first, I want to start this video out with a massive shout out to 6 Francs Photo on Instagram. Thank you so much. They sent me 2 rolls of this to try out in order to review on my channel. And so this review was made possible by this wonderful photographer right here. So go and check them out on Instagram if you are interested to see some of their photography. And thank you again to 6 Francs Photo. Thank you so much for making this video possible. This was a lot of fun to shoot. I had a lot of fun with it, and I created some really spectacular images, if I do say so myself. And those wouldn't have been possible without 6 Francs, so thank you. Okay. So, without further ado, I would like to jump right into my review, and we will talk about specs. Do I always do this for specs? In every video. Specs. Film Washi X is a technical film, which means that it was originally designed for a specific technical purpose, and not just for taking pretty photos. Foreshadowing. It comes on a 36 exposure 35mm roll and has a box speed of 100 ISO. It can be processed in either C41 or E6 color processing. The E6 would be considered a cross process, and so most of the photos that I took on this were processed in C41. But I did get some cross-processed results, but the cross-processed photos contain spoilers for something that I'm going to tell you later on in the video, so I'm not going to show you those to you quite yet. This film has very different retail prices depending on where you get it. Usually I use B&H Photo as like my gold standard for how much a film stock costs, generally speaking, but they actually don't sell Film Washi products on B&H Photo. You can't get them. So instead, we're going to be looking at Nation Photo in Paris for pricing. And at Nation Photo, it goes for 14 euros and 90 cents per roll, or about 22 Canadian dollars. It's not cheap. It is in the upper mid-tier of how much a roll of color 35mm film tends to cost, but it is a gorgeous film stock. So you do get quite a bit of bang for your buck. Washi X is a panchromatic, high-fidelity color film, which means that it renders colors as closely to life as possible. And boy does it. In my experience, the colors in this film are absolutely phenomenal. According to the Film Washi website, it gives beautifully warm-toned and highly saturated pictures, which recall the first color-negative films of the 1940s and 50s. And I would say I agree mostly. There is certainly a strong vintage vibe going on with the colors. I wouldn't say I see the warm tone quite as much as is listed on the website, but maybe that's up to interpretation. The website also mentions that this is a maskless color film. I don't know if you can read that on the focus. Well, you just have to take my word for it. It says maskless color film right here on this canister. In one of my previous videos, I confessed that I actually don't really understand what a maskless color film is. Like, I get it. There's an orange mask that is present in a lot of color films that is not present in this film, but I didn't really understand the utility of omitting that mask. And so in that video, I asked people to explain it in the comments, and they did. So a big shout out to my audience for filling in the gaps on this one. I always really appreciate the well thought out discourse in my comment section. It's honestly a source of pride of mine that my comment sections are usually so bumpin', so thank you guys very much for that. But my audience explained this to me so that I can explain it back to you. The utility of an orange mask on a color film is mostly involved in printing, particularly in accurately reproducing colors when printed using old school methods of color printing with the enlarger in the darkroom. And film stocks that are not intended for printmaking do not need to have that orange mask on them. So omitting the orange mask on this film may be a cost-saving measure. It's not necessary because the film's not going to be printed, so you can save some money on chemicals by just not adding them in. Or it could also be so that the negatives are easier to interpret just by looking at them without any kind of processing to create color positive images. You take a bunch of photos with this film, and then you can develop them really quick, and then look at the negatives and pick out some information just by looking at the negatives, which is something that might not be as possible when the orange mask is present. So now you might be thinking, Why would on-the-fly interpretation of negatives and on-the-fly development of photos be an important asset to this film? On the fly, is that foreshadowing? It is, yes, because this film is intended for flying. It is actually, drumroll please, AOC. Yes, this is AOC 4. So in case you missed it, I have already talked about AOC on this channel in this video about Reflex Labs Pro 100. You can go and watch this video right after this one if you're interested about the finer details of AOC 4. And trust me, this film is all about the finer details. AOC 4 is manufactured by Kodak, hence the sublime color profile, and it was primarily used for aerial mapping functions back in the days when mapping large swaths of land was done on film. Bulk rolls of this were sold primarily to government agencies and other large-scale corporations and contractors who used it to conduct large-scale mapping projects for purposes like agriculture, city planning, forestry studies, pollution, oceanography, among many other uses. This film would be loaded into a camera that was then mounted on a plane, and the plane would fly over an area needing to be surveyed, and it would take like a billion pictures, and they would piece all of those pictures together into a map. Naturally, for this application, a single roll of 36 exposures wouldn't get you very far. So it never really made sense for Kodak to sell AOC in small, consumer-friendly quantities. Instead, AOC has traditionally been available only in bulk rolls, which will cost you like $150,000 if you actually want to buy one. So there's always been this like gap in the market, right? Where consumers may want this film, but they can't buy it because we can't drop $150,000 on a bulk roll, and also, I don't need 180,000 frames of this. I really only need like 60. So there are several film companies now who buy these big bulk rolls of Kodak AOC 4 and chop them up into more consumer-friendly rolls and repackage them under different brand names and sell them back to us as things like Film Washi X. So a few of the other names that AOC is sold under include Flick Films Electra 100, which I have a roll of in my fridge right now, Reflex Labs Pro 100. We've also got Pofo Luminar 100, and Santa Color 100, which I think is one of the better known ones. And all of these are, in fact, Kodak AOC 4, and so is Film Washi X. Or is it? No, I mean, it almost certainly is. Though it appears that this has never been officially confirmed by Film Washi themselves. And so I did some sleuthing, because I wanted to know, is it actually AOC? Like, are we sure? And I did find this Reddit thread where it was posited that this could potentially also be Agfa Avipot Color 100, which is, interestingly, also a maskless color film, 100 ISO, intended for aerial surveillance. But this Agfa stock has been out of production since the 2000s. Could it still be in production somewhere in small batches on demand? Maybe. There are a few Agfa adjacent stocks out there that are like this. I mean, lomography basically uses a lot of old Agfa recipes that have been resurrected by Innovascoat and are produced in small batches specifically for lomography. If you're interested to learn more about the connection between Agfa and Innovascoat and Orwo and lomography, you can go and check out my video on Wolfen NC400. I delve into the relationship between those companies there, not so much lomography, but the other three. Very storied history. I won't bore you with it here, but suffice to say, it's not unprecedented that one of these companies would resurrect one of these stocks for a sufficiently large distributor, which I believe Film Washi is not. So it is Kodak AOC 4, but I wanted to mention all of this for the sake of intrigue. I was admittedly a little disappointed to learn that this was Kodak AOC 4. On the one hand, I have recently decided that AOC is like my favorite color film stock, which means that Film Washi X is also my favorite color film stock. But there's something cool and mysterious about Film Washi, the company. Their cryptic, bare-bones website, their vintage handmade branding, and their one-man army backstory. Finding out that this stock is just Kodak kind of broke the illusion for me a little bit, I think. But it shouldn't have. Because Film Washi is still an extremely cool company with an extremely cool mission and a fascinating line of repurposed technical films available. And I'm going to tell you all about them in this video, right after I talk about my experience shooting with Film Washi X. I have now shot 5 rolls of Kodak AOC. I shot 2 rolls marketed as Washi X and 3 rolls marketed as Reflex Labs Pro 100. Of these, I processed 4 in C41 and 1 in E6. And if I'm being honest, I think I really nailed one of the Film Washi X rolls. The one that I shot in New York, the photos turned out just... And look at these. They're fantastic. This film is designed for detail. Every aspect of this film is built to render detail with as much fidelity as possible. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, being an aerial surveillance film, it's used for capturing large swaths of land from 10,000 feet in the air. And if you're using it to look for diseased trees, it's very important that you're able to distinguish shades of brown from shades of green, even when they're very, very, very tiny on the negative. Likewise, if you're using it to look for missiles in a jungle, you really want to be able to distinguish a teeny tiny bit of fallen log from a teeny tiny bit of shiny metal. And wow, what a magnum opus this film stock is for that application. So with all of that in mind, it's no wonder that this captures cityscapes so beautifully. What makes a cityscape beautiful is its crisp detail. The more detail, the more bustling the city, the more beautiful the photograph. When I shot this stock as Reflex Labs Pro 100 earlier in the summer, I focused more on natural imagery. Hikes and mountain bike rides and beautiful drives through scenic pastures. I wanted to lean into the strengths of the film. But oh my gosh, when I shot it as Washi X, I didn't know that this was Color 4, and so I didn't know that it was meant for capturing forests, and I'm so glad that I didn't, because I might have been tempted to save it for a forest, and instead I shot it in a city, and oh my god, I am so glad that I didn't do any research into this film before shooting with it, because otherwise I might not have discovered this beautiful application for it. I should also mention that I shot all 5 rolls of this at box speed, which is 100 ISO. I mentioned in my Reflex Labs video that the highlights on the cross-processed roll got pretty blown out, so that's something to consider if you're shooting this and intending to cross-process it. But otherwise, all of my photos turned out pretty perfectly exposed. I would recommend shooting this at box speed. And speaking of the cross-processed roll, here are some photos from it. I did already talk about this in my Reflex Labs Pro 100 video, so again, go check that out if you want a more detailed overview. I'm just going to go through it really quick. Cross-processed in E6, this film looks a lot like Lomochrome Purple, or it was at least reminiscent of Lomochrome Purple, and it turns skin tones kind of a purpley pink, which is not particularly flattering in a lot of cases. I would not recommend portraits in E6. There's still a great amount of detail in these shots, despite having been processed in such a funky way. And putting my problems with the highlights aside, the photos that did come out properly exposed look pretty darn cool. Like, I really like the way that it renders contrast, especially in some of these more forest-heavy shots. The cross-processed photos that I liked best were, of course, the ones with the greatest amount of detail that kind of showed off beautiful forest imagery. Would I recommend cross-processing a roll of this? Probably not. Lomig, who is the owner of Film Washi, says that he prefers the look of the film when processed in C41, but that he would consider processing in E6 for a special occasion, which I agree. It is definitely more of like an artsy, early 2000s type of look, whereas when you process in C41, you could just get like perfect photos. So it's up to you. But anyways, this talk of Lomig, of Film Washi, leads me into my final section here, which is the history of Film Washi. Who are they? What do they do? And what else can they bring to the table? Film Washi. Film Washi was founded single-handedly in 2013 by Lomig Periton in his Paris apartment. It was later moved to a decommissioned French military facility where it continues to operate today. The first product was Film Washi W, which was a handcrafted black and white film that was coated onto traditional Japanese washi paper. So if you're familiar with washi tape, I love this stuff. It's the same stuff. This product was inspired by the paper negatives of Henry Fox Talbot, circa 1841, and also by the early Eastman paper rolls, circa 1884. The paper brings a fibrous texture to the negatives, which is why the washi component is so integral in the overall look of the film. In addition to this handcrafted product, Film Washi also offers a range of products made in other facilities that are traditionally reserved to a limited field of technical applications, i.e. not intended for taking pretty pictures. Film Washi sells repurposed films that were originally intended for things like X-rays, aerial surveillance, sound recording, and motion picture recording. They have a few different kinds of aerial surveillance film, of which Film Washi is one, including a near-infrared variety called Z, and a Russian-made film called Washi D. This Russian film is not available currently due to the war in Ukraine. I am very curious about this Russian film manufacturer, though, because I wasn't aware that there were any film manufacturers in Russia. It's news to me, and I kind of wonder who they are and what else they make. So if anyone knows anything about that, drop some info in the comments. According to the Film Washi website, they have sold more than 110,000 rolls of film since starting out in 2013, which makes them a pretty decent manufacturer, but not at all in a position to compete with Kodak and Fuji, etc. Instead, the company aims to complement existing film manufacturers by offering photographers a different, novel approach to analog photography. Their products are now available at more than 40 retailers across France and Europe, and a handful of other retailers abroad. Funnily enough, I actually found a few stores in Montreal, which is a city in French Canada, that sell this product. And I haven't found it anywhere else on this side of the pond, so it was quite a treat to see this roll of Washi S hanging out on a shelf in one of the film stores I visited while I was there. Stay tuned for another review video in the near future. But anyways, I thought that it would be fun to share some more information about Film Washi and the work that they're doing in making these more obscure film stocks available to the public, because I just love the idea of taking technical tools and making art with them. When I was younger, I worked at a paint store, and as one of only 4 employees there, I was often left alone for long periods of time with no customers and no fellow employees in sight. And during this period, I would pass the time by using the tools available in the paint store to make art. I made tin can lanterns out of paint cans, and trivets out of the lids, and cutting boards out of old pallets, and all kinds of things. There was something so enticing about making art out of things that are designed for a specific technical purpose. You can make anything with proper art supplies, but with technical tools, your options are limited, and you have to think a lot harder about how to incorporate different elements of the materials you're working with in order to make a pleasing final product. In a world that is completely dominated by industry, there's a specific feeling that's wrapped up in this act of taking a little piece of industry and converting it into art. This is something that Film Washi does incredibly well. And I gotta say, I am really excited to shoot with some more of their products in the future. That wraps up this video. Another huge thank you to 6 Franks Photo for making this video possible, making this video happen, inspiring me to review this film and talk about this company for the first time on my channel. I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you so much. And thank you guys, all of my audience, for watching this video. Thank you for leaving your thoughts down in the comment section, for leaving a like on this video, and subscribing to my channel if you enjoy my content. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, and I wish you luck in your experiences with Film Washi products if you intend to shoot with any of them in the future. I will see you guys next week with a new video, probably LA related, because I'm going to LA this week, which will be fun. It might be a street photography video. I already did an LA video, and you guys gave me some great ideas for where I should go to get good street photos, so I'm gonna go to those places, and I'll report back. In the meantime, I want you guys to stay sharp, and don't forget to keep shooting. Bye, guys.